If you've been watching our program, We Can Do, which we know you do because we get your contributions on the program on a daily basis, where you reach us from different parts of Nigeria, telling us about your personal experiences and stories that you have heard. You will know that when we latch onto a topic, we do not let it rest, except we have gotten some solutions and some analysis that involves every workable hand coming on deck to do what is best for our nation, just like education, which we began last week. When we began talking about cradle children at the crèche, children in kindergarten, children in primary and secondary school. Then we got to secondary school. Of course, you knew that would not stop there because education doesn't end at the secondary level. You knew that we'll come to the tertiary level, where we'll talk about the colleges of education, the private and public universities. Would also talk about the technical and vocational schools, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So we say welcome to Weekend Deal. Some say it's exhausting, but we say it's exciting, in-depth, analytical, and it involves everyone. And for us, the interactiveness of things is what just makes it a top-notch package for us, just like today. Wherever you are in the nation, please latch on. We're talking about education for Nigeria, for all of us, for our children, for building a progressive nation that we all can benefit from. It's all about the interactiveness of things. My name is Thelma Obaze. Welcome. You know, our program is interactive. Like we say, it's the interactiveness of things that makes it worth the while for everyone. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi leads our conversation in our background feature today as he's talking about the focus, which seems to be more on the quantity of universities than on the quality. And what was the size of the Nigerian students' position in the digital space? Francis, there's lots more. Share, please.
The Nigerian education sector has witnessed a steady decline, and stakeholders fear that the trend will continue if nothing is done to arrest the situation. Looking at tertiary education, for instance, and the national sensitivity that greeted the 2021 ranking confirms that the performance of Nigerian universities in the global university ranking is an issue that calls for serious concern.
And when we're talking about tertiary education, we're probably talking about post-secondary education. Yes, you know, there are issues, you know, with facilities, with utilities, you know, with the content embedded in that sector, content in terms of quality of teachers, quality of learning. All these things can be worked on in the short and in the long-term basis. And we're in the 21st century where learning is determined largely by technology. And do not forget, we're moving fast into the world of artificial intelligence, the world of the Internet of Things, the world of our hypertext document. And what it means again is that, you know, we should be conscious of the need, you know, to ramp up our capacity to introduce technology to learning in those sectors. And beyond that, you know, the structures, buildings, and of course, add the question of quality teachers, professionals, you know, who are up to date in research, you know, who can match the offerings of their peers in other parts of the world.
The increased number of tertiary institutions have not led to improvement in the standard of education in the country over the years. Therefore, it is time to rethink university education to make it fit for meeting present-day challenges.
The problem we only have is that, you know, we are concerned about numbers rather than paying attention to quality. We are concerned about size rather than paying attention to content. We have institutions, organizations in this country that are regulating tertiary institutions. We have the NUC, we have the one for colleges of education, we have the one for polytechnics, isn't it? So all these mechanisms for regulating them, are doing their best, but it's not to say that they cannot also be much more efficient. But you have to realize that despite the existence of regulation, there are still individuals, there are still bodies and groups that are ready to pervert the process.
Another question begging for answer is, who really is in charge of admission into Nigerian universities? If cutoff points are fixed by Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, what then is the relevance of post-unified tertiary matriculation examination conducted by universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education for admission?
The attempt was to create a synergy, a harmony among institutions, so that there will be some level of performance, before you are admitted into the average Nigerian university. So if we are seeing discrepancies coming from the attempt of the universities to also be independent to some level, so that they will not have probably JAM dictating to them because they think that they have some reputation of excellence to protect, or that JAM is probably increasing too much or lowering too much the scores that they are recommending before admissions can be given. So it's a back and forth thing, and we need to appreciate how we started, and so we can probably understand where we are. There's something that universities call carrying capacity, and carrying capacity is just to say that if you have University A, this number of students that we can admit. If we go beyond this, it will affect our quality and our productivity and efficiency. So if a student is probably qualified to study medicine now, and we already have 50 students admitted for medicine, and because you want to say that the students is qualified, is good enough, then you start admitting them even after you have reached your quota. You want to increase their number to 60, it becomes a problem. Then it will affect quality at the end of the day. People have also responded to these, Francis, in different ways when they give them proximate courses, related courses like microbiology, botany, human physiology. By the time they finish those ones after 3-4 years, they go back and study medicine because they are still determined.
Even if Nigerian universities do not attract substantial number of students from Europe, North America and China, it should be a destination of choice for students of sub-Saharan Africa and the Caribbean. Instead, the reverse is the case, as majority of Nigerians who can afford it are migrating to Europe, North America, Asia and the Arab world.
It's worrisome because it's leading to capital flights. Again, it means also that our educational system, it takes a lot, it chips a lot away from how our educational system is, educational institutions are patronized. And of course, resources that will probably have been used to create multipliers in our economy is also taken out. So that extent you say it is worrisome, but what is the solution? The solution again comes back to what we're saying. Can we privilege the provision of infrastructures and utilities in our own institutions? Can we develop our infrastructure better? Can we provide encouragement to the teaching population so that they'll be more encouraged, more bored, to be dedicated and committed? Can we avoid strikes?
The need for collaboration among stakeholders in addressing the falling standard of education in Nigeria cannot be overstated. Therefore, our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on the state of tertiary education in Nigeria.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi talks about encouragement of the facilitators and the lecturers. He's also focused on provision of adequate infrastructure in the universities. There is more. As we now delve into the private universities, do you know that Nigerian University in Edo State is the first private university in Nigeria? From Benin, we learn more about what motivated the Esama of Benin to set up that institution, and a lot more gist from there.
I present this certificate of registration issued by the Federal Republic of Nigeria to Igbenedion University of Kada, Edo State.
This is a tale of Nigerian University, Okada, Edo State, the first private university in Nigeria, founded in 1999.
We were in Aso Rock one day, the former president, Guy Babangida, the telephone rang. He picked it up. I said, what was it again? He said, ASU is on strike again. I suggested to allow private university that would dampen this ASU business. They agreed and instructed the Prime Minister Fopowa to take to action. That is the beginning of the private university.
The history of private universities derives from the decision of the Nigerian state to liberalize university education and allow the participation of private proprietors in the field.
The university, located at Okada, Ovia Northeast Local Government Area in Edo State, was founded by Sir Gabriel Osawao Ibinedion, the Esama of Benin, a renowned philanthropist and humanitarian.
The vision of the Honorable Chancellor was to establish a different kind of university where the products or graduates will have deeper understanding beyond conventional knowledge. In other words, he was prepared to prepare a position or a platform for students to graduate and also to be blue sky graduates and impact on their immediate and global society.
Ever since, more private universities have emerged in the country.
We cannot have too many universities. We only can talk about making sure they live up to their purpose and they are of high quality, they're able to recruit high caliber faculty, the laboratories are well equipped.
The public school alone cannot carry this entire student that is coming into the tertiary institution.
In what ways have the private universities contributed to the advancement of tertiary education in the country?
Private universities is a major intervention because without it would have been a disaster. And just imagine the number of graduates that these private universities have produced over these years, who are positioned in various sectors of the economy and adding value to this economy.
Private tertiary institutions are doing their best to ensure that the gap as regards literacy is met in the societies.
Following the increase of the private-owned universities, questions have been raised concerning the quality and capacity of the schools.
Most of the private universities in Nigeria now, some of them started with just 2 colleges or 2 faculties. With time, I'm sure that this capacity will be increasing with more funds. And that is why there has been so much call for government to support private universities.
Private schools or public schools cannot evaluate themselves in terms of standard. It's this statutory body that ensures that this accreditation, these programs, these qualities are enshrined in the tertiary institution that we have in the country.
Administrators say some of the shortfalls being experienced by these institutions may not be unconnected to the trace of challenges.
To sponsor a university is very, very involving, not only about money. Because even to grow the faculty, where do you get them from? They don't grow on trees. It takes time for a university to be seasoned.
Funding is one big concept that the private school faces as a challenge in the system.
Resolving these issues and finding a common ground remains key to unveiling more advancement in the educational sector.
When we often talk about a support system, like when we discussed private and government schools at the secondary level, some of our contributions stated that the private schools are a support system for the public schools, and it does seem that that's also the case with the tertiary institution. Ayuba went a step further, and Ayuba, in talking with Abdullahi Yusuf Saleh, there's talk about funding. Are we talking overfunding? Are we talking under? And what is the role of the private universities? Ayuba, share, please.
Federal and state governments were the only bodies licensed to operate universities. The oil boom years in the 70s saw tertiary education reaching every sub-region of Nigeria. Nowadays, with licenses being granted to individuals, corporate bodies, and religious organizations, Nigeria is home to 170 universities, 43 federal universities, 48 state universities, and 79 private universities.
Nigeria has seen a significant growth in the number of universities that came up in recent times. We gave a lot of priority to universities, and so we see a lot of private universities coming up. Largely, again, because government has not lived up to expectation. If government had provided the much-needed universities that we want, I think the private universities will be out of business. However, again, it's also good for the nation because we can't leave everything to government. We cannot, again, we know that the government universities might not be able to provide all that is needed. Therefore, the coming in of the private universities is timely and it's welcomed. And I just think that all they need is proper regulation, and they should be put on course.
For a while now, private universities have been the preferred option for parents and guardians to enroll their wards, and the reasons are quite obvious.
The public universities are inadequate. They cannot absorb all the graduates that we churn out every year. That we see when JAM gives you admission, you go to the school, you realize that they have a certain limit that they can admit. That had been a very, very serious challenge because year in, year out, people apply and they don't get admission. So the private universities are there to cover up for that deficiency. If there were more universities, more public universities, that can absorb the number of children that graduate from these secondary schools, I think the private universities might be out of business because they are quite expensive.
That being established, few questions arise. Are the exorbitant fees of private universities justifiable?
To run a university is quite expensive. Now, find out how much the public university spends on run the university because somebody pays for it. Largely, we can say TED Fund has contributed a lot to survival of those public universities. The private universities, they have built the infrastructure, they have to pay the teachers and so many other things. And education cannot be cheap anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, if you're traveling out of the country, you spend very good money. So I can't say it's expensive for now because if it is, probably I ask you to try ignorance. Stay out of school and then let's see what happens.
The second question is, because private universities are beyond the financial reach of some Nigerians, what measures could be taken to ensure the smooth running of public universities?
It behoves on government to do the needful. Now that's where I again have a problem because when government gives private universities standards, you go to those same public universities and they don't meet such standards. So I have a problem with that. However, I think over the past years, starting from Babangida's regime in 1990, because of the need, because of the plight of the public universities, ETF came into existence so that public universities can be funded, both state and federal, from funds 2% of profits from companies. And then it was repealed, that act was repealed in 2004 to establish a TED Fund. You cannot discuss the funding of public universities without mentioning TED Fund. TED Fund is the key agency responsible for that, either teacher development, the lecturers, or providing infrastructure, whatever is needed for the universities to thrive. However, again, not much has been done, though TED Fund has done very well, especially under Professor Suleiman Bogoro, that you would see everywhere that TED Fund has done remarkably well. I think if they keep to their objectives, if they keep to their mandate, if it's all politicized, TED Fund has the capacity to fix all these problems we're talking about. Issues of labs, issues of classrooms conducive, because go around the universities you see, almost all the buildings there are funded by TED funds, since the cost, tuition is very low. It might not even meet the salaries of the workers within the system. Talk more of doing other things. So we cannot discuss these issues without TED fund. And I think we really need to relook TED fund and see why politicians have an eye on it and have suddenly taken over, and therefore it's losing its real identity.
Without a doubt, both prospective and present students in universities await with bated breath as stakeholders in both the public and private sector work tirelessly to ensure top-quality graduates from world-standard Nigerian universities.
What is interesting about all of this talk about education is that our graduates are not just going to graduate and say we're from Nigeria and it ends there. They have to be competitive enough to stand front and center with their peers the world over. So it's not a Nigerian or an African thing, it's a global thing. That's why perhaps we have tagged it the state of tertiary education in Nigeria is a concern for all. Let's meet our guest, one of our guests today, Mrs. Rosemary Ojochenemi Oshikoya, a former commissioner for education in Kogi State and executive director of the Ladi Memorial Foundation here in the FCT. It's great to get to meet you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. But we'll talk more after we visit Lagos. We'll be talking about technical education in Nigeria. Did you know, according to Dr. Charles Oni, that there are 3 types of potentials? Let's learn more.
Education is a fundamental part of life. It is the bedrock of the society. Education has over the years transformed the world from primitive to modern because it changes people's thinking and capacity to do things.
There are 3 types of potentials that every child has. Some people have what is called cognitive domain. That is, they can think hard, they can comprehend anything you teach them. We do say in ordinary language that they have zeros brains. We find among them lecturers, people who can think as orators and all that. But we also have some people who are affective. There are many in music, there are many in fashion design, cosmetologists and all that. And then we have people who have psychomotor potentials. When you are psychomotor compliant, it means that you can use your brain with your hands to achieve success.
Education has many branches, one of which is the technical education. In Nigeria, technical education has contributed to development. It equips students with skills for problem solving.
Those who go into technical education are people who are rich in psychomotor potentials. We did not key into technical education at the right time and at the right pace. Look, when Professor Babalola was the Minister for Education, for example, he introduced the 6334 educational system. But because of our ego, Nigerians are egoistic. They say, the son of so-so-so is attending university. The son of so-so-so is attending college of education and all that. My son to go to technical, when you have the basic education up to GSS 3, then you continue on in that pace to go to higher education, to either go to technical college, or you go to polytechnic, or you go to the university.
For states that have made giant strides in development, they've been able to invest so much in the area of technology with respect to getting equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, and of course, manpower development.
Nigerian technical institutions have produced graduates that can compete favorably on the international stage, even with the challenges facing the sector. What is Lagos State government doing to ensure the technical education system remains relevant?
What we've done is you know, of course, according to Nigerian curriculum, there's pre-vocational, which they do up to like GSS 3. Then from senior secondary, we have given them options as well. We have 5 technical colleges across the state. And these colleges are really elite colleges running a large number of courses, ranging from welding and construction to fashion design, to catering, to ICT, and so on. So we have them all over. But again, we are also giving options to students who cannot get into these schools by ensuring that we are starting to build technical labs and workshops in our existing schools. So at least there's an option for every student. And if they don't go on to WAEC and go on to university, they still have a means of living.
Since technical education in Nigeria has not attained the maximum performance of its potential, what other means can be used to get to the goals?
I know that government and then the private sector, you know, especially, that they are helping technical education. You know, I know the input of some organization in sponsoring or training and retraining teachers in technical education, but in the main, the government kind of abandoned, you know, the technical education area, which ought to have been the cream de la cream that everybody will support heavily.
Key players suggest government should invest more in technical education subsector so as to contribute to national technological development.
Interesting. Dr. Charles Oni says technical education ought to be looked at as the creme de la creme, perhaps of education after the secondary level. We are learning, it's a learning process. We are talking about interpreting education in such a way that it has the best impact on those who come to benefit something from it. Mrs. Rosemary Oshikoya, you are well situationed in this field. We've talked about Ladi Memorial Foundation, and we know that you are partnering with many organizations, including ours.
Like NTA?
Yes, to ensure that young and old benefit. Tell us.
First, I would like to thank the DG NTA because he has given this huge support to a critical missing point in everything we're talking about. One of it is encouraging and incentivizing people to even be interested in TVET. We have all said everything about stigmatization of technical vocational education. I listened to somebody say just last week that for those who travel a lot abroad, when you go to any of the streets of the developed country, you proudly see normal everyday people wearing their work coveralls. They are technicians. They carry their toolboxes, they carry their plumbing skill, and then at that point, everybody celebrates them. The society claps for them. They fix the streets. They fix every other thing that you see. But then when you come to Nigeria and you see the poor guy putting on his coverall because he's a mechanic, everybody look down on him on the streets. And so his children feel this field is not it. It's not it in the Nigerian sense. And so nobody wants to get dirty and not. So one of it is encouraging, sensitizing, and advocating that people should get involved. And having said that, is the UNESCO-supported school sewing competition is one of the strategy of sensitizing stakeholders and getting them to give more support to technical vocational education and training to create more incentive among young people.
Who are these stakeholders? Everybody's saying government.
Okay.
Who are the stakeholders?
The stakeholders is every one of us that has contributed to it. A parent is a stakeholder. But beyond a parent, every professional association is a stakeholder. Because when you talk about occupational skills, it covers every domain of our life. The food you eat, it covers the house you live in, it covers even where you grow your things, the habitation where you live. And so when you narrow it down specific, as though when you talk about technical, you are only interested in people who are engineers and building robots and the rest of them, it becomes a narrow vision of what we are talking about. But when you begin to take, for instance, the skills we are talking about, sewing, you would think that what concerns a tailor with technical skills, right? But what is the equipment you use in sewing?
The sewing machine.
It's a sewing machine. It is both a mechanical piece of equipment and then it is are they coupled in Nigeria? By virtue of this sensitization, we paid advocacy visit to the executive vice chairman of NASENI. And I'm excited that he's talking about how do we couple these equipments, how do we bring them to Nigeria, how are the parts going to be gathered in Nigeria.
So hitherto we're not making sewing machines
exactly
here. I know Siemens used to do quite a bit,
okay,
but Nigeria can.
But now, if the cost of a sewing machine in the market currently is about 240,000 naira, how many Nigerians can afford it? So if you're coupling them locally, so you see, when we talk about technical vocational, we shouldn't just shift our mind to, I want to be a rocket science engineer, and then I want to be an aeronautic engineering. Engineering in that, or technical in that context, could be just our everyday life. What do I need in the mobility that I need? Because if you go to countries like China and the rest of them, every day they devise solutions to their everyday life. And so you find torchlights that are available, you find motorcycles that are available, and the cost of life comes down. Even agriculture, which we say we are in agriculture. So how much of that technology is available? And all of that. So I think we need to redefine and reperceive this thing we are talking about, that in every community, in every society, we have our everyday needs affecting every area of our life. Technology makes life easier. But it is not just going to be the sophisticated, how do I conquer the moon kind of. It can be as basic as, how does it affect my life? How does it make costs cheaper? How does it provide solution to everyday life? And then you begin to look at all the stratas. And most importantly, when you're talking technical, I hope you know that craftsmanship and artisanship, they are the ones that drive economies everywhere.
Indeed.
And so if in Nigeria today, the next time you need a quality technician, or an engineer, or maybe at that basic level, we have to go to Chad and Niger. The next time you need a tailor and technician, it means that we have not looked at it very well.
There's a gap here, obviously.
Exactly.
But tell us something, because I do know that for now, many people that work in offices, they earn huge salaries, they think I'm okay. It's all, you know, I'm fine. But sometimes you can even learn skills that will broaden our perspective and make us treat others with regard and respect. But tell us, what's happening with you and your team working? What do you find? Women, and is it just young girls who come?
I was sharing with you a very interesting scenario we had in our local JAR training center. Sometime in 2019 or 2020, one of the trainees we have there is a director who is a chartered accountant working with the Kogi State Civil Service. And she came to our center to learn tailoring skills. And I got very curious. Madam, you're a chartered accountant. And how would you do that? Of course, she brought in the idea of livelihood diversification. That takes us to lifelong learning. It's often an area most of us in Nigeria don't talk about. You learn all your life. And for so long as you are alive, you know, it's been said that people who read, especially as they age, they stay longer, they stay healthier, and a whole lot of all that. So you find when we talk about lifelong learning, conceptually, a child learns crafts from when he's in school. You've seen children with building blocks. So you find that as their brain begins to develop, you find that they are able to do things with their hand. They learn from what they do according to their developmental stages. And we do crafts in school. And from craft, you progress into the pre-vocational subjects as you have them in junior secondary school. Then you get into the full-fledged one. So you find that those skills depends on the propensity of the individual and the interest of the individual. You actually learn skills. Now, to think that you go to school and learn only theories and that the practical side of that skill is abandoned somewhere is the reason we are having the disconnect. Because if you look at it, I think we watch American videos, and when you watch most of these European videos, when you find girls that are going to do prom, they sew their clothes themselves.
Some.
Well, abroad, for most times, you find that by the time a child is finishing school, he's already doing skills. And most of their learning, in fact, there's a study that is going on now that says the reason why they do more of practical abroad now is because of the impact of the phone and other electronic devices on their brain.
But
so
bring us home. Bring us home. What is happening?
To bring you home to Nigeria, where we are right now, is I want to agree with the Federal Ministry of Education that there's need for us to go back to a lot more of the practical skills. But this is what we said. If it is true that most of the electrical things we buy on the streets of Nigeria are developed as practical research by students in other countries of the world, then today we celebrate just a bit of them. Somebody develops a device, possibly a prototype aeroplane, and we clap for the person. And then we said, now, of all the technical schools we have, how many of them in real terms are providing products that are usable on our streets? Let's not go far. For instance, in metallurgy, we use a lot of farm. We use a lot of farm implements, right? Hoes and cutlasses. How much of the market share are taken over by our technical students in school. I would want to say, let me speak for garments making, bringing it home real. Every year, Nigerian students write garment making exam. It's as simple as tailoring, right? But yet, most of Nigerians still import their clothes from abroad in the name of content standards.
Most? Not anymore.
Well, it will shock you to know what I heard, that the fashionable way to sew your clothes in Nigeria now, if you live in Abuja, is to sew them in Dubai or Turkey.
And interesting. That's less than 2% of those people.
Okay.
I know many women who make their clothes here.
Okay, then let me that percentage again. How easy is it for you during any festive period to sew your clothes? There is a cloth in the market, because there are not enough tailors that serve the population of Nigeria. Compare that with Bangladesh, that makes a lot of currency exporting clothes that are made, labels and all of that. So how much of Nigerians' foreign exchange is taken over by importation of either these clothes?
But the reason why we're having this conversation is to promote, so that Nigeria can progress.
Which is why we are advocating.
We'd like for you to share the real-life experience of what it takes for young, middle-aged, and adults to come and learn a skill, be it sewing or anything, and the impact it will have on them in the long term. But let me take one or two messages. We're getting this one from Aliyu Zizu in Makodi, Benue State. He says this topic is very interesting and encouraging. He says, keep it up. He says, God bless you. We're also going, let's go to Sokoto now, where Aisha tells us that when I was in secondary school, I really wanted to learn sewing. But I was concerned about becoming a medical doctor, and my focus was on preparing myself for university. From that time up till now, I have not had the time or opportunity with raising my children to go back to learn these skills. I find this topic very, very interesting. This is Aisha reaching us from Sokoto. Aisha, make the time so you can learn and make your own clothes.
Exactly.
So that our neighbors will not be going to Dubai to make their clothes.
And you can get paid for
money
it.
will be spent
in
here.
Nigeria.
But tell us, what do you find when young girls come? Are they excited to be learning? What about their mothers, their aunties, their grandmothers?
First, is two sides to that coin. On the one side, you find people who are very motivated. For instance, in every school, we all need to know that entrepreneurship subject is mandatory in all Nigerian schools. It is expected, according to the UBEC law, Universal Basic Education Law, before a child completes junior secondary school, you should have a skill for livelihood. So at the only time you are permitted to drop out in quote from school is after junior secondary school 3. And by that time, you're supposed to have developed sufficient skill enough for you to earn an income. Put it at that basic level. And it is impressive that if you look around, I did that about the time you tour around, the Universal Basic Education Commission has actually invested into constructing home economic centers, you call them, vocational skill centers in schools. But the challenge we have is that these are far apart. They are not enough. Like if you go around there, for all the pre-vocational or all the vocational subjects you have, about 40 of them on the average, you would need to have a workshop for each of them. So talking about simple skills that women like me need, women like culinary skills, catering skills, baking skills, sewing skills, because we have the basic need of man, like we all know, is food, clothing, and shelter. And when you talk about what you wear, Nigerians are very fashionable, which is why I said it's one of the most quick win for all of us. With a population of about 200 million people, and who needs to wear clothes and good clothes at that, it's usually a quick win. So if, like, I agree again with the Executive Secretary, the National Board for Technical Education, when he gave us the data last week about how much money other countries are making from just garments, either production of the cotton and the value chain that goes with it, is simply amazing. But having said that, it's a problem of access.
Thank you so much for coming to share with us today, Mrs. Rosemary Ojochenemi Oshikoya, Executive Director, Ladi Memorial Foundation, and a former Commissioner for Education in Kogi State. She always gets us thinking, opens up all your brain points, so you're thinking outside. In fact, like there's no box. You're watching Weekend Deal. A break beckons. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Weekend Deal. It's always great to have you partner with us because your messages make it worth our while. We can share your experiences with the world, we can learn from them, and then everybody progresses together. Let's quickly introduce our guest, then we go to Ibadan. Our guest today is the former Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Education, but today he is the Executive Secretary of TED Fund, architect Sonny Echano.
Good morning.
It's great to have you on Weekend Deal. Yes, we'll come in to have a chat. But first, let's look at funding at public universities. Ibadan is going to share some information with us.
Financing tertiary education in our nation has become an issue of public concern as a result of present economic downturn. Moreover, all efforts exhibited single-handedly by the federal government in financing all the established tertiary institutions in the country seem not enough because of the agitations of the union.
If the government realizes that it cannot develop to compete with the rest of the world without education, it will make education a topmost priority. And that will inform the amount of money that's allocated to run tertiary institutions. Number two, policy trust. It's like we take one step forward and 2 steps backwards. And that is likely responsible again to the percentage allocation in our budget every year. So if you visit any of our campuses, colleges of education, polytechnics and universities, you will be shocked to find out that the infrastructure is likely deficient, overcrowding, most of our systems are not functioning, likely because there's no money to run the system.
Nigeria is part of UNESCO. And there's a UNESCO recommendation of what government should make budgetary provisions for education. I mean, UNESCO says any developing country would actually develop should invest at least 26% of its annual budget into education. This year, I think what we have for education is just a little about 5%, which is not significant at all. I mean, when you talk about the rot and decay in the system, you know that, of course, the system needs a massive injection of funds to be able to actually reverse the decay and rot that we have been talking about in the university system. Go to the students' hostel. I mean, rooms that are meant for 1, 2 people are being inhabited by 6, 7, 8, 9, at times 10 people. When you go to the classrooms, I mean, the classrooms are getting smaller compared to the number of enrollments we have in the university.
Education, which serves as central hub of development in a well-civilized environment, occupies an important position. Neglecting its financing is out of the question. What can be done in generating resources towards proper funding of our tertiary education in order to build up all other sectors in attaining economic stability?
So if the government makes education topmost priority, it should take the largest share of our national budget every year. And when the federal government does that, all state governments should be encouraged to do that because it is education that shapes the future of this country, economically, politically, socially, technologically.
Government should stop paying lip service. You see, they have the needs assessment committee document. It's a committee of government. Let them go there. What they need to do with public education is inside their document.
Look at this equipment, these facilities. Were facilities that were designed and fabricated and sponsored from our salary and from the effort of students, those that we took through the training for them to understand how to design, fabricate. You can see this when there was problem of getting value addition. We want to encourage government. It is better for us if we can put money in education so that all Nigeria will not move from here to London, to whatever. There is nothing they are learning there that is not available here.
In discovering innovations through researches from our universities, it is imperative to intensify financial support not only from the federal government, but from all other concerned partners and stakeholders who can share the burden and stress in order to enjoy more improved tertiary educational system in our nation.
We tagged our package this week, the state of tertiary institutions in Nigeria. When we hear the word the state, something may nudge you to say things are not as they were or as they ought to be. We know that the first university in Nigeria, federal university that is the University of Ibadan. Perhaps some of the information we just heard came from there. Some may find it interesting and surprising. We introduced Secretary for TED Fund earlier, architect Sonia Chana. He's here, and I do know that when you took over the affairs of TED Fund, architect, you said that you will build on what's already existing and you will promote content development and research and development as well. So definitely you hit the ground running. Yeah. Tell us more.
Thank you very much. TED Fund over the years have been known for providing infrastructure on our campuses. And if you visit any campus of a university or polytechnic or college of education today, you see our logo on most of the buildings. But at a point, there was a strategic shift to try and focus more on the content, on the people who prepare the students, on the curriculum that is run in these schools, and for a good number of reasons. First, the quality of education is important. You can address access by providing additional facilities, but you also have to produce quality. And we needed to ensure that the graduates that we produce will be useful to society, will be useful to the demands of the job market. So we're discussing issues around employability. And for those reasons, we've undertaken to prepare those who teach them, the academic staff. Over the last 11 years, the current number is about 30,000 academics that have been trained to obtain masters and PhDs, both at home and abroad. 30,000 by TED Fund.
Facilitators or lecturers, is that up to 1/10 of the number we have?
Incidentally, in many institutions, the average is about 45% of the teaching staff that we have done across the country. And secondly, we also sponsor them to improve themselves. Another 72,000 have attended either workshops or conferences or engaged in professional development schemes all across the world and also locally. And that is exclusive to what I just mentioned to you. Also locally, we are promoting research, as I said. And at the level of research, there are two components of our interventions. We have what we call the institutional-based research, where we encourage the teaching staff to carry out research within their institutions. And these are managed by the schools around their ecosystem. So we make these funds available to every institution, and they encourage scholars to be researchers in those institutions. And
did you pay attention, like UI, Nsukka, Ife, the major universities that highlight and hallmark what we term great, excellent education in Nigeria in times past?
I'll come to that, because since you also talked about University of Ibadan, we have great plans for that university. And we are doing a lot there right now, actually. But we are even still going to do more, because we have what we call our centers of excellence. We have 24 of them. And we give priority to these first generation universities you're talking about, Ibadan, Zaria, Nsukka, Ife, and Lagos, and also Benin. And then we also encourage all the specialized universities to focus sharply on their areas, in the various areas where they have the competencies, they have the faculty, and we call them centers of excellence. We are also going to be promoting innovation hubs across so many institutions, and these are being done on a very competitive basis. For University of Ibadan, for example, from this year, we are going to establish a regional research center where even, because it's a partnership we are doing with our Diaspora Commission, that Nigerians who have done so well all across the world, who have developed products, who have undertaken research, can actually come back home.
Interesting.
And we're going to have that kind of facility that have the most modern equipment and all the things that they need to be able to conduct research. And that is going to be situated in Ibadan. We're also going to have one.
That's happening when?
Well, from this year. From this year's budget, we'll begin to put that. But we have already established a center of excellence for cross-cutting studies in the University of Ibadan. And we are harnessing them. The same thing applied to the books development that we are also sponsoring. We realized that the last time we actually published books was in 2014. And I felt that we cannot have a book development policy, and we're having problems having academic texts, or there's all sorts of issues around whether handouts should be permitted or not. But in the last year alone, we've been able to launch 60 of those books. Recently, we just did about quality books, world standard, peer-reviewed, and they've been acclaimed all over the world that Nigeria is now doing something. And our students are going to begin to get those benefits because we're making them available in all the libraries in our tertiary institutions, and we're encouraging the authors to also produce them and sell, you know, to the public. So we believe over time, because we set a target for ourselves, we'll do a minimum of 50 books every year. I expect that number to actually be exceeded.
They say that politicians and bigwigs, high-ranking people are arms into the TED fund so that they can take advantage of it, where it is the hope that those who are not as privileged as some people are those who should benefit. Is there any truth to that statement?
No, I can assure you that under my watch, we are going to implement the mandate of TED Fund as conceived. And I have strong support to do this. I also have put in place mechanisms. We are cooperating with the stakeholders themselves, the staff unions that fought for TED Fund to be established. We are working very closely with them to ensure that it is the needs of our institutions. Somebody talked about needs assessment that was done. So I was running the education administration at the point. So I'm aware of what those needs are. But still, what TED Fund has done now is to throw it back to all the beneficiary institutions. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be calling them all back, and we will allocate the resources made available to the institutions direct, so that they can apply it to their specific needs, peculiar needs. It is not for us at TED Fund to determine to them what they need in their schools. So over time, you're going to see that the transformation will be, if you like, meteoric, because we'll be addressing specific growth potentials,
and
specific challenges.
Them.
And we have our primary job is to actually monitor. And we are getting this monitoring done by my staff, as well as even involving the unions to also help us monitor. We are also putting monitors within the institutions themselves to give us second opinion. So by and large, I know the mechanism, the framework is there to ensure that we judiciously and prudently deploy the resources available to us in achieving the mandates of TED Fund. So we have cut out any external influence. It's not going to be easy, and we are getting a lot of pushbacks, if you like. But the truth of the matter is that I'm determined to ensure that, given the magnitude of the challenge, you don't ask a child that has sickle cell to donate blood. The education sector is not a sector that can service any other, because we are in great need of funds.
It's interesting. And one will now look in an area that we think maybe you'll be partial to, being an architect. Are you doing anything Nigeria, you know, are we renowned for architecture? Are architects standing out in what they do? Are they known?
Incidentally, that is one of the success stories of our country, in the sense that in the field of architecture, we've been able to demonstrate on the international scale that Nigerian architects can compete with any across the world. Really? Again, this has happened also. I mean, it's happening in various fields. You see Nigerian lecturers abroad, they are doing very well. Our doctors are sought after all over the world. So in terms of the average Nigerian, and yes, we are very intelligent, very hardworking people. And that reputation nobody should ignore. For architecture, if you see most of the buildings that we are the one country, I mean one set of profession that we don't have too much, if you like, influx of foreigners coming to do projects here anymore. Most of the buildings that you see across our landscape are designed by Nigerians. And a lot of Nigerians are now going abroad to establish practices. Across Africa, I have so many firms that are Nigerian principal partners that are helping them to develop their countries, from South Africa to Botswana to Ghana. Nigerians are practicing in all those countries. And again, of course, you know, part of the brain drain we've been talking about is Nigerian architects going to Dubai, going to Saudi Arabia, going to Qatar to help other countries do it. We will do what we try. You see, again, it's the whole egg and chicken thing, that we need to create the opportunities for them to actually stay back home and contribute. But there is nothing wrong with you producing the excess that you require, that it will go out there, and they are going to remit resources. Our diaspora remittances have become a very significant component of our national earnings. That is what is happening in India. That is how China also had a breakthrough in terms of finance for their countries.
Interesting. I know you have spoken expansively about your scholarships, your research grants and all, but like with many things that happen in Nigeria, people feel I have to know someone before I can access, you know, such a thing. And we know that it has a great impact on anyone who can access it and benefit and utilize it for the best purpose. Does someone need to know someone, to beg someone, to bribe someone to access TED funding?
Let me explain how this works. TED Fund does not give scholarships on its own. What we do, we make provisions for institutions. So it is the institutions that determine what area of need they want to sponsor their own staff who are employed by them as scholars to go and acquire either master's degrees or PhDs or even postdoc. Some of the institutions come back to me, and it's a good story to tell. Ibadan, for example, that you mentioned earlier, came to me to say, look, we have reached the point where all our lecturers now have PhDs. They don't have a single lecturer in that university that doesn't have a PhD. So they're saying, okay, so we now have to rethink how we utilize our funding for this training, since we don't need to train people for master's and PhD anymore. And a number of other institutions are coming to that stage. So we'll now channel such to innovation, to other creative ways, to issues around research, and to encourage them to also continually improve and compete on the global scale.
Interesting. It sounds like everything is going well. Let's just take one or two messages just before you leave. Someone says here, Shaibu from Taraba State says, I'm overwhelmed with the discussion about TED Fund's performance. Really, it has done a lot in the educational sector in the country. I do say they ought to continue so that as many people can will benefit from TED funding. Joseph is from Benue, Van Dikia local government. He said your discussion is very interesting. I do hope it is as he says.
Yeah. Well,
okay? Yeah, people want to believe what they hear and they want to hope that it is so. We want to thank you, Architect.
Thank you very much.
Architect Sonia Chono, Secretary, TED Fund. Fantastic chat with you today on Weekend Deal. We wish you well.
It's been my pleasure. I encourage Nigerians also to actively contribute to what we're doing. The schools are located in communities. So if they can take an interest, see what is happening. If you see anything that is not right, let us know. And we also we are open to engaging with the public, with NGOs and so on. And we believe that it's our country. We should all contribute to its development.
Thank you. Tomorrow is another day. Do join us then and keep your contributions coming in. Bye-bye from all of us.